There we go.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vem with Friends, episode 4.
4 already.
Yeah,
Oh
I know,
my goodness.
right? Since we started, it's been crazy. So we're gonna do this up to 6, and then we're gonna take a couple of weeks break, and we're gonna repost some of the content just in case you missed something. We're still coming here from the office live in Toronto, and I hope you guys had a great weekend. A lot of things in the world aspiring, a lot of crazy commotions, a lot of panic, a lot of nervousness. But also, we need to keep in mind what we listen to, and we also need to verify our sources for information. So, guys, be vigilant and stay focused. So,
Are we broadcasting right now? You
yeah,
think?
we're broadcasting. You just got a little
Probably a little
delay
bit of a
there.
lag, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thanks guys for joining us again. Week number 4. Yeah, time does fly. We'll see. Maybe we'll do a catch up next week, and we'll send out an invite for that, and can expect to see our faces, our lovely faces again. Charlie, he'll be away, so we'll be missing him. But I don't know. Maybe we'll come up with something creative. We'll zoom Charlie in from his trip. No, no, he's on break. He's on break.
No.
We'll let him enjoy his
No, I'm
his
down.
his
I'm
extended.
down. Yeah, a lot of crazy things in the world. Do you see how, with the adoption of crypto to help people over there, both in Russia and in Ukraine, which is really cool to see.
I have to repost this online.
Okay, so we're live.
Okay, great. So then we'll just use post-production stuff. Sorry about that, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. LinkedIn was having an issue with their live. I'll just continue. So Chris, we'll kind of bring Chris in right now. I think that, yeah. So we want to give a warm welcome to Chris Follett from WSP. He is the current chair of Indigenous initiatives there at WSP, and we're looking more to learn on what WSP is up to, especially looking forward for this year in terms of their plans and objectives. And we're also going to talk about Indigenous business and WSP's involvement there. So with that being said, let's bring on Chris and let's chop it up. Chris,
my man.
Good morning. How are you? How is everybody today?
Good.
How are you?
Excellent. Nice. Thanks for having me today. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about WSP. For those of you that don't know me, I've been with WSP for 5 years. I've been working with First Nations on various projects for the last 15 to 20 years of my career, starting in Manitoba and continuing in Ontario, working on a variety of development projects and different treaty land entitlements, different First Nations rights, variety of different things from self-governance and asset management right across the board. And now involved with capital planning with the Inuit and a few other groups. So it's been exciting for me to be involved and watching the transitions and the developments and improvements in First Nations services and funding, and finally getting things back on track for people of Canada. And it's been fantastic to see things improve. With that, I prepared a short presentation to show the group and this broadcast. In particular, I know Vem.energy work in the energy sector. So for that, I picked one project where we worked on a Hydro One station with First Nations for a expansion onto the grid. I thought that would have been appropriate to tie into and how WSP worked in that project and what some of the things that we facilitated to be successful with it are, and some of the other First Nation services we have right now that we're working with them to explain, what kind of services we have and what our capabilities are. So with that, I'd like to start with this short presentation. I'll be pretty brief about it. You can read it as you are, as you like, and I can share it with the participants through Mark and Charlie.
Yeah, we have you on the big screen so we can follow along right as you say.
Yep.
So go ahead, Chris. Thank you for that.
Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to share now. Just making sure I picked the right screen. Let me know if you see it properly.
Yeah, we see it. It's beautiful. We got the full screen and it's really good quality.
All right, great. Thanks.
You can start whenever you're ready.
Just trying to get it to move to the next slide. There we go. So here I'll just quickly discuss WSP and our environmental group, because that's usually where you start in a lot of projects. You start with the environmental regulations and the approval process there. Within Canada, WSP has over, I think we're between 7,000 to 9,000 staff, and directly in our environmental team, we have about 2,000 people. We recently acquired Golder Group, so that has significantly increased our environmental and geotechnical expertise across Canada. And directly working in the Indigenous area of expertise, there's close to 300 people working directly with First Nations across Canada on a daily basis. So the amount of work that we're doing and the amount of projects that we're involved in is quite substantial across Canada. Knowing that Volterra is a green company, we're looking, green energy, battery technology, things we're doing for the environment. Some of these things you see highlighted on the slide are part of those delivery systems to keep the environment as part of the critical mass in terms of like what we need to do to make sure things are green, safe, protect the environment, protect First Nations rights, and to create a better future for our families, our life, and understanding there's also financial and benefits to everyone within the First Nations and to Canada as a whole. In working with First Nations and working in the environmental things, some of these key items are used to look at the labs, testing, investigations, and so forth, to facilitate the approvals to the federal government process. Ecology is big in terms of looking at environmental restraints and what we have to do to be successful. Climate change and sustainability is a new group that we've created within the company. Right now, as we know, with climate change, everyone knows the big swing differences. I just saw on the Weather Network this morning that we're in for a roller coaster ride of temperatures, going up plus and minus 20 degrees within a few days, a lot of freeze thaw effects. I don't know if anyone lives in those areas, but if you've got roads that are going through freeze thaws, we're getting, potholes or getting upheavals. So right now, the way our infrastructure is built, we have to take climate and sustainability into account as part of the life cycle analysis to understand, what are those future costs going to be to ensure that, we have protections and financials in place to make sure we have good success in our projects. Here, we did a 230 kilovolt municipal transformer station in Pickering, Ontario. This is a project that did involve First Nations because of its location. There was a lot of investigations and archaeological work, and it required going right through all 4 stages of archaeological services because of what was found on site. This was a support a land development project. And as you can see here, through a 5-year process, there was actually human remains found, and it required, involving the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture, different levels of government, and it required a lot of sensitive hands to handle, the process of what would be done for this energy project in particular. Here you can see the communities that were involved and directly participated. It was quite significant. There's about a dozen listed there, and everyone was directly involved, and communication was successful to, improve the site to facilitate the development in the energy project. We understand how communication is very important with Indigenous peoples. Working with them as a partnership. Right now we're doing some projects with them, and you have to understand that they have to be part of all the process. It's not like you dictate or suggest, or you make them part of the team, make them inclusive of the decision-making process, and that's very key. different engagement that we do with them are listed here. We've been working land use studies, land claim settlements, consulting with them in different areas, working with negotiations with communities and government, and to facilitate sessions of engagement to make sure there's something comes out of this that's meaningful. And in conclusion, we understand, we recognize, support, understand, respect to help build a better community. And that's part of what our mandate is. If you look further on our website, you'll see that we have supported First Nations across the country, and we also participate in education funds, sponsorships, and lots of other initiatives that are well underway, including staffing and working with the communities directly. Mark and Charlie, thank you for the time today to give this representation. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Chris. Yeah, that's really good insight there. And, for all that will be able to watch this, and even when we replay this, definitely a good educational tool for upcoming communities to learn a little bit about obviously what WSP does, but what other nations need to do in order to be compliant with these type of projects. I mean, that's an extensive feasibility that has to be done just to kind of analyze the lands to make sure that they're clean and clear of all issues that could possibly pop up, right? I mean, it kind of reminds me of some articles that I've read in the most recent past of lithium mines that were sitting on old, not burial grounds, but ceremonial things were found on the lands and could not be developed for that situation. So it's just the steps that need to be taken, right, to make sure that the projects that go on there are not disturbing anything Indigenous related.
Yeah, I think that people would want to know, from your perspective, let's say you are a non-Indigenous business and you have the desire to go into business with an Indigenous community, have some sort of revenue sharing for whatever the business is. If you could explain what that process is for both sides, and where do you find the roadblocks, any of the issues that sort of are you see most commonly, because working with First Nations groups is extremely important. So what do you see that business relationship looking like, and what is the best structure in order to do so?
I can comment a little bit on it in some respects. I'm not a financial expert, but in the past, it's been difficult for those partnerships to be successful because you're working with First Nation and reserve land. And, in the past, it was difficult because you can't mortgage that property. You can't place liens on that property. So it was very difficult for lenders to have security in the projects because of a title system. The old land title system that we used, they're not subject to the same sort of rules. However, financial mechanisms and law have changed in the last 10 to 15 years to allow partnerships between First Nations and private lenders to be successful. I'm not a lawyer, like I said, or a finance expert, but there are new mechanisms in place that provide assurities and protections on both sides that are upheld in the courts now, and that would allow those sort of partnerships to work and be successful on reserve property and on reserve lands. So that's been a big step now, and that's why you're now seeing the private sector investing into these infrastructure projects and working alongside with First Nations and partnerships. And I've got lots of different clients that are looking to do that. They got capital available. Some want to get involved with farming. Some want to get involved in mining. Some want to get involved in grocery, retail. There's all sorts of different initiatives now. Even Costco, I think, has placed a store in I think in the Calgary area on First Nation land. So there's been tremendous a lot of success right now, and that's it's gearing up. A lot of people don't know about it yet, but it's starting to make headway and getting a lot of notice in the financial markets, and it's improving the future growth on First Nations land and infrastructure projects across Canada, and it's quite exciting right now.
Yeah, totally. It definitely is an exciting time, and a lot of their values They align with ours very well in terms of being the stewards of the land. They believe in clean energy. They're adverse to pollution. Do you want to talk a little bit about a BCR, what that is, and what the right methods are to with reach out, how to get those executed?
I've only been involved with one band council resolution in the past with Gambler First Nations in Manitoba, representing them on, doing an urban reserve. Part of that allows you to my understanding, at least, is to represent that First Nation and their interests. So you basically become part of the community as a whole. Like you become involved directly. So it solidifies that partnership agreement that yes, that you are working with the council and the chief of that First Nation, and that you are successfully laid out a plan and a mandate, and that you proceed with the application and you proceed to show that publicly. And that's what it allows us to do, to my knowledge.
Thank you for that, Chris. I want to kind of move into, some of the obstacles and issues that, you've experienced in the past working with First Nations and getting their cooperation, and, maybe suggest, some sort of solution for having some of these leadership councils come to the forefront in talking about green infrastructure and how we're, looking to help them, not harm them. There's been a lot of pushback from our angle, from our side, trying to engage with a lot of these nations and getting them to listen to us. Is there any type of similar experiences, that you've kind of encountered and then overcome, perhaps, that you can share?
Not exactly, because usually when I'm working with them, they're coming to me for my expertise to, help them with, what their issues are directly. So usually there's a plan ahead of the time, and what they want to do. I can't say I've had any difficulties, working in that space, not from my side, right? It's just a little bit different. I understand from the, financial and capital side, that's where, I've seen previous obstacles. I think that's where the bridges need to be built, and that's where you need some improvement.
No, that's a fair answer. I mean, yeah, I could see a lot of things being vetted a lot before it even gets up to your desk, right? And WSP engagement. It's just from where we're sitting, it could take a little bit longer just to kind of engage communities. But we're fortunate that we do have some great leadership, Indigenous leadership on our side now, that makes a lot of the cooperation start to fall in place and follow suit. And I think that that's what is really what we're talking about, creating a movement that can get more Indigenous communities, where however remote they are, to start, cooperating and being a part of the transition to clean energy, which, really can start with them, right? Because there's such an advantageous position with relationships, with cooperation in like other communities that surround them, because it always seems like there's like a hub and there's a bunch of communities that are outside of that hub, right? And then you have to kind of get their cooperation just overall, right? So that could be things that just take a little bit more time to get approved at their meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. You're not just working with one First Nation, you're working with a group or a regional area, right? So that's, it's not any projects like this that your caliber. You're not trying to just benefit, one First Nation particularly. Lots of times you're working with multiple, and that's what you want. You want the community as a whole, and it's not just one particular town or district or area. You want the community, which means community like throughout a region. It has to have a larger impact for the benefits for the group. That's the goal.
Exactly. I mean, as a part of our MO, we are trying to target the communities that are heavily reliant on diesel powered communities, and get them to start looking at all the renewable solutions that we have available to us and to share with them, right? But yeah, sometimes that can get complicated because
Remoteness,
and supply chains that have already been established, and trying to get them to switch over and look at cleaner solutions. So there's some things to kind of kick down there.
Yeah. Chris, hate to love you and leave you. I have an 11:30, but you guys continue talking. I'm just gonna head out of the room, okay? But good to see you.
Yeah, see you later.
Thanks, Rod. So and again, I know the CIB has put forward some really good mandates to build green infrastructure in Canada, and has given a 5% set aside for Indigenous business to participate in a lot of this infrastructure growth, and we're looking to take advantage of that and get applications in for approval at that level. Is there anything that you'd like to maybe shed some light on just any communities that could be tuning in to looking at all these different advantages?
There are funding things available, but you have to create a business plan. I mean, it's the case in point, right? It's you have to create a partnership, a business plan, have a solid plan in place, and you have to have capital available, to fund it at the beginning. You need the initial capital up front to do the work, to build the business case, and invest in it initially to prove the success, right? It's more than just an idea. You have to put boots on the ground sort of thing. You have to actually get the work done, to build it up, right? So it requires an investment, an initial capital investment at the beginning to build that business case even stronger than just a bit of lines on paper, right? So you have to show some of that work up front to be more successful.
No, I think that's really good input there, and really that's what nations should be kind of tuning into. And if they don't have like the immediate expertise within their community, they need to search outside of their community on, like, let's say, the big brother or big sister that can really help them out to get them on that path to creating any type of pre-feasibility conversation, business plan. Super important. Just the initial steps, right, that it's going to take to get those things going. Yeah.
Would you say that what you mentioned there is the biggest barrier to entry for new projects or projects that are looking to come from the idea stage to the investment to the seed stage, all the way to kind of like the first pilot?
Yeah, you have to have the capital there to get some of the work, some of the research done, some of the initial studies have to be done, just to check off some of the big boxes, right? You have to, identify the project, identify a site. You have to, do environmental reviews. You have to just check off certain things first before you really start spending money on the project, because it's no good to have the money for the project in place if it's going to fail. So you have to identify what the vision is. You identify some of the restraints, do some of those initial studies, and then that can then build the business case, right? And it's, if you want to take something similar, how can I put it to you? It's like if you're going to take a house and you're going to renovate it, you make sure the foundation is solid first, right, before you renovate. It's no good to put a new roof and a new building on top of an old foundation. So you have to build that foundation at the beginning. Some of those initial works have to be complete to prove the case, that it will be a successful project.
No, I think that's very wise, and it's the information that we want to put out there, and just kind of it's very intimidating, right? You
Right.
think about these billion-dollar investments, green initiatives, that are being done, and people just don't know where to start, right? And again, what he's explaining could take a year of discussing, putting input in, consulting with others, fund that whole mission, because they may not have the know-how on how to do a business plan. Just think about the really real basic stuff, right?
The logistics of that.
Yeah,
Just of how and who does that put together, and what avenue of the government do you even send that business plan to, right?
Yeah.
And who's your initial contact?
Yeah.
And that's one of the barriers that a lot of people have when dealing with federal and stuff like that, because there is no one kind of point person. They always kind of rotate in these roles, and they're kind of fluid, and they're always changing based on who's in power and who's kind of in charge. I mean, even for research and development funds, right?
Mhm.
Their strategy completely changes. One year they could be totally focused on startups, and another they could have some different government mandates. So they change their vision and they change the structure and they adjust the funding like that as well. Yeah.
No, that's good. And that's what we have to adjust your sails while you're sailing the seas, right? Like, until you reach your destination. And it's all possible. And, Volterra, Indigenous Energy Canada, we're looking to, prove that out and really showcase for other nations to come to us, right? So we can help them establish these connections and these applications and these business plans. And that's what we do, right? And we do it well. And I think that it gets easier as you start doing it with more and more nations. It's kind of like you're creating that blueprint, and then you can easily present that blueprint, and also you can present the nation behind that, right, to cooperate with you. I can say freely that we're working with a nation, Rainy River, out of Rainy River, Fort Francis, and they're all about the support, right? They're all about being that big brother, big sister leadership, right, for other communities to kind of tag along behind, because no one, to me, is really taking that role to help Canadian Indigenous business. Obviously we're aligned with Carol Ann Hilton from Indigenomics, and she's helping to spell out that narrative, right? That everybody get on board. We want to build this $100 billion Indigenous economy, right? But again, that number is super intimidating. Somebody who might be coming from a small little community don't know how they need to play a part in it, but there's a part for everybody. Right? Because everybody is coming with their own value add from whatever province they may be in, region they may be in, right? All these little pieces kind of fit into the puzzle, right? To be a part of that movement. And we're not saying for every Indigenous community in every little nick and cranny of the province to, come to big conventions and stuff like that. That could be difficult for them. But if we can just get them to connect, in a social way, right? There's more friendly Indigenous groups that I've seen on LinkedIn that have been created, Indigenous-led pages on Twitter that I've seen that have been, populating, and just some of the basics, like let's say a Facebook page, right, where we can get that cooperation and really get the message out to them. And I think that once they connect there and they know how to connect to people like us, right, then they don't feel as intimidated that we're real people, behind the picture, right? Like, Chris in a very, let's call it intimidating position as a chair at WSP for Indigenous initiatives, that is intimidating, right? To a little community that just wants to reach out for some help. Where do I start? And that's where we're here to share that message that, you can find a starting point with your community, reach out to us, connect with us, and then, or connect to any social pages that you may be a part of, and be a part of the narrative, be a part of the conversation instead of just being an observer. Right. And that will really help you take that brave step that you need to do.
And I think what Chris also pointed out is the hardest is to get the wheels in motion, to get all these studies, to get everything done, so you have a successful launch, so the government can see that you're doing something. So there's a proof of concept, right? And not only the government, but your investors or even the First Nations themselves would want to see a track record, right? Yeah. They're not going to kind of go blindly into something just because it looks good on paper and it's a good idea, right? There's always the execution part, and there's always the team players that are involved. And do they have a track record of being proven? And do they have some projects behind their belt? And I guess once you get it going, the wheels start turning more and more, right?
Exactly.
And then you'll start be able to getting more government funding or cooperations or other things like that.
Exactly. And as Volterra, we have some really exciting announcements coming up. I'm gonna have to hold them back, right? But believe me, once they're available for public disclosure, we're more than going to be pushing behind that narrative based on this conversation, because that's what we want to do. That's our strategy, right? Create that fear of missing out effect, right? Get so much nations involved, put the PR out, and let it start inviting other nations to come to that table on how they need to participate. Not want to participate, how they need to participate in this infrastructure build that's happening across Canada. That, yes, it's set out at 35 billion. That's a huge number, right? But it's where it's spent. And if we can participate in helping our Indigenous fill that 5% that's been set aside by the Infrastructure Bank, I think that's really going to open up doors for next year's mandate or the other future blocks of mandate years. Wouldn't you agree, Chris? I mean, what do you think about this whole conversation here?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of exciting things happening. There's funding available, but you do have to get a lot of that work done ahead of time to be successful, 100%.
Great.
What do you see as the biggest kind of role after the fact that you've, like, let's say you've done a study, let's say you've done an ecological study, let's say you have a business plan that's more or less prepared for the government. What would you say is the biggest kind of barrier to entry for actually presenting it to the government and for having your plan not only shown by someone, but to actually have it reviewed by either the funds that are considering infrastructure bank, or if it's like an IRAP initiative where it's a research project or other things like that? What do you think is the biggest barrier to entry when you're applying for government funding and when you're applying for money that's going to lead your project from the kind of pilot phase into actually initiating?
Actually, I guess way you have to look at it, it has to be First Nations led. They have to be the drivers behind it. They have to put the time and energy and support into it. Right? It's for them. So as we have them, we're here to support and provide partnerships for them, but they themselves have to drive it. They have to get the steering wheel in their hands and drive the bus. It's for them to do. Right. So you need to have them directly involved. They have to directly lead the project and have that ambition within themselves to do it. That's a key point.
So I think it's about creating that spark, right? You create that spark in a nation who didn't think that they could do anything, and all of a sudden, when they feel like they can contribute to something, join another nation, partnership up with somebody else, or whatever the case is. I think that will help, like, them open up, say, oh, by the way, I have this 100,000 acre plot over here, right? That we're, or 10 kilometer square plot over here that we can probably do something with. It starts getting their juices flowing, right? Instead of just keeping it and not developing it for economic purposes, right? That are going to benefit them. So yeah, I think that's what it's kind of really trying to ignite, that spark, and let them know that don't count yourself out just yet. We're just at the start of this.
Exactly.
Everything is new, right? I mean, not everyone's just going to be like, oh, there's $35 billion, that the Canada's pumping into green infrastructure. Not everybody's going to say like, oh, yippee, yay, yay.
They might not be aware, right? Like
they're exactly 100%.
You hear these figures, you see these regulations, and you see this, but until I think you have something that you've done this before, until you have this road, until you've built the relations with not only the First Nations, but until you've built the relations with the funding and with the organizations that will disperse the money and that will match the funding and things like that, it's a very big struggle. And I think it's just like walking in the snow, where you have to go to the tracks that have been there before in order to get to the same destination, and then you can kind of trace your own path and see what is the best path forward, what obstacles that I've seen. Because I think the initial first time approach is kind of going to be really intimidating, even for people that have been in the industry before and in the space, directly dealing with the government.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. It's definitely a good analogy too, in terms of trying to, break it all down. So is there anything else that you'd like to ask?
Any leading comments or final questions or anything that just comes to mind when you're talking about things like that?
No, not particular, but as I showed in my example, my slides, it was a large land development project. It was an energy project that had to be done. It took 5 years of work before a shovel went in the ground, right? And that's just on the initial environmental and archaeological studies. So,
and I think that's really important to consider, that the amount of time and the amount of actual resources that goes in. And I think that's why it's really important to have some of like you, Chris, here, and your very important role into saying like, hey, we did the studies. This is what has to be done, right? These are the regular steps we took. And once you were talking about, this is the kind of the checklist that you did. And I think it's very important to see how to do it properly and what's the right way to do it. Because when you follow that formula, you have a project like success and like yourself, and you have a billion, not like trillion dollar company going after someone, and you have a large team behind that, right? And it took not just a small little organization, it took many scientists, and I saw those numbers that you mentioned in the slides. that you need someone who already knows what they're doing, right? This is not just hey, let's come up with this. Hey, let's just throw some funds together. You need experts in the field and experts that have done that before.
Absolutely.
you're
And that's why we're heavily
absolutely
reliant on collaborating with WSP with all of our Indigenous projects, because they literally have so many different departments that cater to so many specific things, and their resource base is just phenomenal, right? So we have true confidence in Chris and everything that he's been able to introduce via WSP, and finding the right fit for us. So he's been really great doing that for us. Thank you again, Chris, for everything you've done with us so far, and the collaborate with WSP. And yeah, we're looking forward to sharing some really great news in the near future.
Thank you for your time, Chris.
Appreciate it,
taking
Chris.
time out of your schedule. It's been
Have
a
a
real
wonderful day.
pleasure, and it's really informative. Thank you for everything that you brought to this conversation.
Great.
Yeah, you're very welcome. If you've got any further questions, contact me directly. Love to have some open dialogue and conversation.
No,
Yeah.
I think so. Super beneficial. Thank you.
Definitely.
And then looking for, things didn't really work out too much with our LinkedIn live, but it's definitely got on Twitter. But look out,
Yeah.
we're going to get the replay up.
Yeah, we're
And-
going to repost that, and we're going to make sure that people have access to the things that you were talking about,
Yes.
and that the information is there, because that's the important.
It
that
is the
people
important
are
part.
known and the
Yeah.
people are prepared.
No, you're absolutely right. I only scratched the surface a little bit of some of the service lines, but some of the projects that we're working with in infrastructure and directly the First Nations have teams of 50, 60 people working on them, right? So, they're quite, takes quite the effort to, build, bring forward a large project, right? It's a multidiscipline, multifaceted approach to, hit all the points, dot your I's, cross your T's, and so forth. It takes a lot of effort.
And I think leadership is really important in that. So when you have multiple departments, when you have 60 people or even upwards of that, I think organizing everything and making sure that deadlines are hit, like kind of milestones and all the things are put into place, I think that's really important to have somebody that can overview as someone like yourself who has all this experience and who has all this great knowledge and things that you have done and things that you will do, right? Because it leads to almost like a method where you're able to put projects from the beginning to a successful end and to accomplish what you set out to accomplish, right?
Yep. It's part of the delivery process. You're absolutely correct.
Thanks again, Chris. And we'll be in contact soon. And we'll keep you posted on everything.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a great day.
Have a nice day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.